Hi, everybody. Nick Blazier here with another Inside Backgammon interview. Before we kick that off, just reminding you that I'll be in Virginia in just a couple short weeks doing the commentary for the Cherry Blossom tournament. We hope to do a whole lot of cool production with the video on that too. So tune into that for sure. Probably on the USBGF channel, run by Ben Friesen, who I've interviewed on here too, and with a lot of help from Blunderblots on the video. You'll see. But cool. Without further ado, with me today, I have Tim Cross. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, Nick. Good to see you.
Yeah, I have you listed as Grandmaster and Coach. Did I cover all the bases? Are you like a board member too, and I just don't know about it yet?
Well, I was a board member for 4 or 5 years, but I've just retired at the end of last year.
Okay,
After,
okay.
after all the controversy last year, I was quite pleased to be off the board. But we tried to do our best, and that's all we can do.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and I just wish all the current board all the best. The UK VGF board.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
good organisation that I support. So
Yeah,
even now I'm not on the board, I still support it very much.
absolutely. This is a common theme I hear from people that have been involved in like backgammon federations across the globe. I feel like is like it's a thankless job, right? Like you work hard for it.
Especially last year, we had half of the people thinking we had half thinking we were terrible in one direction, half thinking we were terrible in the other, and nobody thinking we were right. So it was a disaster. But never mind, we tried our best, and we did. I mean, it was a tough time for us, and
Sure.
we're all different, and we all have different opinions ourselves, and we just had to try and do the best we possibly could, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
But like I said, the new board's taken over now, and I wish them all the best.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's cool stuff. I mean, I got to talk a lot to Andrew Selby and like Jeff Hall and
Oh
stuff like
yes,
that. And it sounds like
that's
it
it.
sounds like
Yeah,
things are doing really well
Andrew's
over there.
still on.
Yeah,
Yeah, Andrew's still on the board, and he's
yeah,
obviously doing. He's really fired up. Running lots of tournaments, but more, he's just a promoter. That's what's great about Andrew. He makes things happen, and
yeah,
that's his real powerful. He just, he makes things happen just being around him, and that's a good thing. We're pleased
yeah.
to support. Yeah.
That's super exciting stuff for the growth of backgammon. We need more people that know how to do that. I guess I try to like help out that way in my own way, but I don't think of myself as like a marketing expert like that or any. Like I still not quite like a person like that. So
No.
we need them. Yeah.
Absolutely, we need all kinds of people. Like, and you mentioned that, and then you have people like Steve Lee, who was my co-TD in the UK Open, and runs a West Yorkshire Open. Does lots of things for the North of England backgammon, and he's an incredible worker. He runs great tournaments. There's all kinds of different people in this backgammon world that we're lucky to have.
Right. Right.
All with the different skills. If we could all work together, it'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm saying this because John Lennon's in my background. This imagined idea. Let's all be together. So yeah,
I love
but,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest gap I've been noticing lately, or that's been alive with me for a while, like doing a lot of commentary is just like video editing and sort of like that whole skill set of like making a produced sort of content. There's like a little bit of that in Galaxy, but yeah, so I've got someone to work with at the Cherry Blossom tournament, which I'm really excited about. I'm excited to see this like Nesh production guy like doing a lot of stuff with Ardos tournaments. Like it's coming through. We'll find all those people.
We see all you do, and the one thing that I mean, obviously, you're a top quality commentator, but what's really impressive, I believe you could transcribe at the same time as commentating. That seems that gets my admiration, Nick, for sure. Well done. Well done.
I promise it's not too bad as long as the computer can keep up. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that's the hard part. When things start lagging and like you can't just enter the move when you need to, then you're in some trouble for sure. But yeah, so I wanted to have you on to talk about, like, I know you've been at most, if not all, of the UBC contender tournaments, always putting up really strong results. Top player in the UK scene, and everyone knows you there too. And your name comes up a lot as like a highly sought after coach. So I just wanted to learn more about,
Thanks, Nick.
like all these aspects. I guess we can start with your play. Like when did you get into backgammon, and when did you sort of arrive as like a top player?
Okay, so I went. 17 years old, I walked into this, or 16 perhaps, I walked
Okay.
into the school sixth form common room
Yeah.
and there was a backgammon board.
Yeah.
Nothing more or less than that. Before that, I had been a chess player till about 13 or 14. And then I got bored with chess and, sitting for 6 hours playing against 60-year-old men and draw and taking hours to work, to win with a one pawn advantage end game. And it was just boring. But it was a tough, boring. I didn't enjoy it. And then I found backgammon, which is tremendous fun. Just walked straight into the game, taught myself, played without a cube for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Lots and lots of play. Got anybody I could to play against me, and I just learned the game that way. And I'd love to know how I was playing at that point. I think pretty well, but who knows? I've not got a clue. That's one of the things. So I played for a year without a cube,
Yeah.
and of course, at my age, that was pre-internet days, and so I then, of course, and also I was a sportsman. I played football, squash, really keen, and they took priority in my early to mid 20s. But I always wanted to get back to backgammon, but I had nobody to play,
Mm-hmm.
and so we had no. But at those days, you can't just put backgammon in a Google search engine. I had nobody, I didn't know who to play. I occasionally, not, it wasn't like a constant search, but I'd go into libraries and try and find a backgammon book or some kind of contact. I just couldn't find anybody. Then one day, my best mate, Barry Bradshaw, not part of the backgammon scene anymore, but he walked into a local pub, and saw two players, David Wallbank and Nigel Merrigan, playing backgammon. And he just said, "I've got a mate who'd love to join you guys." And I was I was introduced straight away to BBIL, run by Michael Crane, and NPBS, which was the one that that run by Haig, that was just before BIBA. These were the organisations in the UK before the UK BGF took over.
Okay.
Yes. So and that's it. And as soon as you're in the in the group, then I've got friends in the, I met people. I was only a young man then, 30. I played for about 7 or 8 years. Then really quite keen. Again, I really don't know how good we were.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's no matches recorded, and we certainly thought that the people in USA and Germany were in a completely different league than us, and whether they were or not, we'll never know. So
Yeah.
that's it. And but then I had a break for 20 odd years or so, and I came back in 2014.
Okay.
And my very first match was against Mochi
Okay.
in the UK Open.
Yeah.
And poor Mochi must have wondered what would hit him. This guy he'd never met before walked in and said, "Hi, Mochi, I want to join your under 4 club." And you probably thought, who's this crazy guy who's saying this to me? And so we played a game, and of course, being lucky, I won. And he, of course, outplayed me. But I played creditably right on my comeback. But I have been playing against XG quietly. So that's fundamental my backgammon history. And I made more, obviously, because of BMAB. My name got bigger quite quickly, especially when I became a grandmaster and things like that. So it's for me, XG and PR has been a wonderful thing. It enables players to make the name a lot quicker than it did in the old days, where you had to travel the world and hopefully win a tournament. But as somebody can play. Let me give you an example. Somebody like Mitchie, he could play the World Championship 30 times in his life, and he could either win never or fight 5 times. That's the nature of backgammon. Even one lifetime isn't enough to sort out how many wins you have in something like that. So anyway, Mitchie, I'm rooting you to win another 5 times now. He's a nice guy. He's a lovely guy, isn't he, Mitchie?
Of course.
Yeah,
of course. It'd be great to see him world champion someday.
Absolutely. Would he absolutely deserve it.
And it's almost hard to imagine that he won't be someday, right? Like, I don't know. But there's so
Well,
many
it's not.
names.
Well, sadly, it's not Nick. That's the nature of backgammon.
Yeah.
Somebody as good as him could easily not win the world championship, even
Yeah.
if it's just the nature of the game we play, and it makes it's as good as it is bad part of the game.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah, it makes it exciting that like truly anyone can win as well, right? Like I've always thought
Yes.
that's a
Yeah.
really important part of differentiator between chess, for example, or something like that, is that it's like interesting to play at a large scale still because you do have a chance, right? Like it's not
Yes.
you're not hopping in a tournament where you're just completely outclassed, like maybe other like billiards or sports or something like that, you know?
Yes.
Like there's enough luck where an amateur can win too. So I think that's really
Absolutely,
cool. Yeah.
it's an unusual game we play. It's really strange, but it's good for that as well as bad. There's two sides to the same, to the same coin.
Yeah.
You know, like you say, it's good that other people get a chance, and and like I say, both sides to it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. The both sides to it to me as well is like it's what allows people to keep playing for a long term and blame something other than their skill.
Yes,
Yeah, that's always a nice
yes.
thing in luck. But
Oh,
it's also that's like a challenge to good players as well. That like, well, you have to look at your skill and maybe not blame luck every time, right?
yeah,
And so it's a really
absolutely.
like, I mean, it's a different sort of mentality that you need to be successful at something like that versus something like chess, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At this point, Nick, will you give me a chance to mention my friend Brian Lever, who sadly passed away recently? But
Mm.
what I always remember about Brian is he was totally the opposite.
Yeah.
Every time he every time he got struck with a really bad run of unlucky dice, he'd still blame himself rather than the dice. He was totally the opposite. But even though that makes him a nice guy, it's not always the case. Sometimes you can play brilliantly and still lose. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Ryan always found the thing he'd done wrong
Yeah.
and never blamed the dice. So that
Yeah.
probably goes more to say what kind of great guy he was. So yeah.
Yeah, that seems really stressful. I remember talking a lot to Simon Barjett about that too,
Oh
about
yes.
like just my disposition is that it very much is luck oriented and I'm trying to solve a puzzle, but like I have very little control over it. But I mean there
Yes.
are a lot of top players that really believe that like any mistake is what costs them the match and things
Yes.
like that. And they
Yes.
can be very hard on themselves about that, you know? And
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, if that's what motivates you, great. But, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
where do you land in that camp? Are you pretty kind of like the dice do what they do and I just play my best or?
I kind of pretend, Nick. I think I'm naturally somebody who struggle who hates being unlucky, but pretends that he can take it with a pinch of salt. And that pretense is a good thing to do. If you pretend hard enough, it actually becomes true. And so Steve, again, Steve Gibbon, my best mate in Backgammon,
Yeah.
I've known him for like 30 years at least. He says that's the big difference in me. He says it's not that you're a better backgammon player, but your attitude at the board is so much better than it was as a young man, and he knows my game more than anybody else. So I've got to accept that, and I think it's true. The time I learned to accept luck and the nature of the game and play with equilibrium was the moment I moved forward. And I've got another little tip, if you don't mind me sharing it,
Of
Nick.
course. Yeah.
On my email address is TC66. My car registration is TC66, TC66, and the idea behind that is to try and kid myself that I roll double sixes in races when it matters, because
Ah,
I believe in a positive attitude. I don't really believe it in my heart, but it absolutely stops just the idea that I try and pretend to myself that I'm a lucky player, and if anybody asks me a question, I try and imagine that I've been lucky, because I believe it's the best way to think, whether it's true. But as long as it stops you thinking you're unlucky, it's a good thing. So I would try and advise anybody to try their hardest to believe they're lucky, or at least believe they're not unlucky, and
yeah.
yeah, it really does make you a better player. There's
Yeah.
something about playing with a negative attitude really makes you not as good a player. And
Yeah.
so that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I love that. At first, I thought it was going to be the opposite, and that you're the guy that always dances on a 1 point board. you know.
But
But okay, it can be good racing numbers too.
exactly. It does happen sometimes, though. And it always seems to happen a lot of times straight after the other, doesn't it? You know, it's like sometimes it can be relentless. You just can't get a break, it feels, in backgammon. But
Yeah.
that's what's good for you. And that's, that's what it's good for you.
Oh,
And
of
then
course, of
suddenly,
course.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
suddenly, I hadn't won a tournament for quite a while. And then suddenly I won 5 or 6 holes to get in about it's crazy. And then I've gone dry again. I've not won again for about 2 or 3 years. It's a
Yeah.
strange game. There's just you never know when it's going to happen. It just comes out of the blue. It's a strange game. And all you
Right.
have to just stick at it and just see what happens and try it and play, do what you can control to the best of your ability. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like a lot of games too, like a little bit of luck on the right side of your studies probably helps a lot too. Like I
Yes.
had some
Yeah.
good, like I still haven't won any major event or anything like that, but I had some really good finishes like in
Oh,
my first year or two or something like that.
like,
Um,
didn't you do absolutely fantastic? I noticed you do something fantastic on the Internet World Championship or something.
yeah.
Sorry, Nick, I can't remember exactly. Second. Oh, second. All right. Well, it wasn't forgot by me anyway, Nick.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah, yeah.
I've had a lot of very satisfying seconds.
Oh, yes. Well,
I
again, I had. You just never know when it's going to come through, and you suddenly get lucky, and you suddenly win a couple of,
Yeah.
DMP games that you haven't played that well in, and then suddenly you've got
Absolutely.
it just happens, and you just don't know. I mean, I was fortunate during the COVID. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance to go to America, and so with COVID was great for me because it allowed me to play on the tour, the UK, what's it called, the USBGF tour online,
Oh
and
yeah. Cool.
and again, and I only played about 6 or 7 tournaments, and I won 2 of them. And everybody was going, Tim Cross is a new star in town. And I wasn't playing great. I was just lucky, And but it was a good time to have the luck. And it made a few people sit up and notice me over there. But
Yeah.
they were very welcoming, very welcoming. But
Yeah.
again, I wasn't playing great backgammon, just made decent backgammon and just got lucky. That's
Sure.
the way to do it,
Yeah. I do love that. Well, I guess before I don't want to miss your point about mentality over the board either. Like I
Oh, that's
really I think there's something very almost like potentially intimidating about playing against someone who believes they're lucky too, right? Like it
Yes,
rubs off and then you're like, this guy is gonna win the race if I get into a race and I
absolutely.
can't.
Oh, Rachel Rose, who a great player for a long time in the UK. Last year, she won the UK BGF Tour and she had a great run. And in the middle of her run, it was all going well for an hour, it wasn't going great for me. I remember playing this game, and she just knew she was going to win. It was a great feeling. I thought, I want that feeling. And she just knew that she was going to win, and I could just feel it on the other side of the board. She just knew that it was we got the cube up high, and it was a 50-50 race, but she knew she was going to win, and I didn't, and that was it. And good for her. It is a powerful feeling, and it does feel like it works, but whether that's just like confirmation bias or not, I'm not sure.
Sure.
But if it's true, it's a good one to have. That's my biggest point about it,
Yeah, I mean, like whatever the truth of it is, like it can also have all kinds of positive mental effects, such as
Yes,
like, and I guess
absolutely.
like if I was going to guess about that, like if you are imagining that you're going to win every game, then you're looking for a way to as well. You
Yes,
know what I mean?
I think so.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe that can make you play less conservative when you need to, or something like that.
It's
But who knows?
It's something I don't understand myself, but
Yeah,
I do feel there is a relationship between the two. It does feel like a relationship, but of course I'm getting feedback all the time with recording my matches of how I'm playing,
right.
and it doesn't, because I used to think, well, it was because I was positive, I was playing better.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily relate. In my,
Mhm.
in bad patches, I'm still playing okay backgammon,
Yeah.
but I'm expecting to lose, and therefore, and I'm fulfilling my expectations. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and vice versa. When I'm on a good run and expecting to win, that seems to work as well. And
Sure. Yeah.
if we could just bottle it, it would be great. It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to play Rachel this year, see if she's still got that incredible positivity. Yeah, but I'll ask her when I see her.
That's fantastic. That's so as far as correlation between PR and studying and win rates too, are you someone that that believes that there's more to like a winning player than playing perfect backgammon, or
I'm afraid this won't make me very popular, but I think there's absolutely nothing more or less to it than PR and win percentage. Long term is exactly the same thing.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I understand some people won't agree, but I'm firmly on the side of PR and long term win rate is exactly the same thing. You
yeah,
know, I mean, and you can see, that's right. I don't even adjust my play against anybody. I just try and play best PR backgammon,
yeah.
and my results are there on the BMAB website for people to look at. So who knows? But whether I'm right or not, who knows?
Sure,
But I
sure.
just believe just play PR backgammon, and the results. I just think you just have to look at the results. So the results and low PR players win more than
Yeah,
not low PR players in the long term. But of course, there's always exceptions, and that's
right.
the case. But I'm firmly on one side of that debate.
Yeah.
I'll listen to other views, but I'm afraid I've made my mind up.
I enjoy that. Yeah. No, it made me wonder just because of like the positivity and attitude and about like winning. If
Yes,
you think there's something, I don't know, if there might be more to the PR or something like that. Yeah.
I, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything, but I do think, like I said, I think it's just I just feel somehow that this positivity is a really good thing to have and to believe in it. Also, I do think, and
Sure.
so this is one of the sad things, and some of the more bolchy argumentative players get better results than they deserve because they intimidate some of the weaker players. They
Mm.
don't intimidate the top players in any way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
They just play their own game and just get on with it. But I suspect that somehow they get better results against the low because they're intimidating, because they don't only expect to win, they tell their opponent they expect to win as well.
Yeah.
In certain terms. But I wish that wasn't the case, but I suspect it might be.
Right. Yeah.
No names, but just though we know the kind of people who are
Yeah.
pretty bulky over the board and still good players. I actually do think that they gain from it,
Sure.
but I'm not certain though. But even if it was true, I'm trying to sound like an angel here, but even if it were true, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
not angelic in everywhere, but we won't go into that.
Yeah. I
know.
think I'm very much with you there, where I don't prefer to think or play that way either. And it's what actually kind of I don't know, like I lost the fire about poker because of that too. It's like I felt like that
Really?
was all of the game at the time. And now you can kind of like study more of it and think about it more from like a theory perspective. But I guess where the conversation comes up, make like a really good point there, that it doesn't tend to be how can I deviate from XG to beat like a very refined top level player. It's always,
Yes.
is there some way to win more against an amateur or something like this, or someone in a
Yes.
lower
Yes.
range? And should I adjust? And you can make all kinds of arguments about that. But it is interesting to me that like every player thinking that way or successfully like having a high win rate does also have a low average PR, right? And so maybe it's not like it's
not
like
easy.
within
Right.
that, how do we actually study that or anything? They probably all work, right? They're all like positive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, if I got. Let me just say, and I know that many great players. In fact, Dirk even wrote a chapter in his book about adjusting,
yeah,
and there's a famous book from the past, something about eating fishes or something like that.
yeah. Can a fish taste twice as good?
Fishes, yeah, and all this kind of thing. But
Eating fishes.
but I'm firmly of the opinion, I don't know how fielders are playing this way, but I just play PR backgammon against every level.
Mhm.
My theory being that you cannot afford to give. You've got to do the best you can on every move, and if you voluntarily play a bad move, that's giving them some PR difference back straight away that I don't want to give them.
Yeah,
Now, the other thing, another of my theory is that the top players who don't play against weak players, they do it just for weak players. They don't realize what happens, which is when they have this idea that playing against a weak player, they don't double and they just make the game last longer. But the reality is when you're playing a weaker player and you double normally and they suddenly don't turn into a shark with the cube. and then
Right.
and then double you back at the most really scary, intimidating point. They either double back miles too early or miles too late.
Yeah.
So it's not quite the horrific experience of people. But there's times where you sat at the board thinking, "Please don't double me, please don't double me back." But
Sure.
very often they don't.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing you get if you do double normally, that these play against a weaker players, it'll drop.
Yeah.
When they shouldn't drop. And that, so that's a big advantage, that by doubling late you're losing. So like I said, again, I'm firmly on the side of just playing PR backgammon, but I completely respect some great players who have got a different attitude. And again, we haven't got a lifetime's worth of results to see, and not that are long enough to find how, I mean, I've got like I said, I'm quite proud of my long-term win percentage on BMAP, but apparently Mislav worked it out. I've got one of the top two, so that's
wow.
That's really nice. So
what is that, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't know. It's around the 65%.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Thank you. And but it's on my BMAP. You if I've exaggerated, the whole everybody watching this will now go and check it. But but he, sorry, I was so. It stands up, but there's no way you can ever actually compare which is the best system, unless one of the two players is substantially getting worse than the other one. But that's my theory anyway. Just play your best backgammon at all times, and don't give away any equity advantage you might have, and hopefully that'll take care of itself.
Yeah.
But please, anybody watching, I'm not arrogant. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm right and experts like Dirk are wrong. Not in any way. It's just my theory. And you have to. But when I'm coaching people, I have said, listen to me, listen to other experts, but then make your decision yourself.
Yeah.
Don't follow somebody absolutely without, if you want to be top, you've got to have an independent mind as well. So listen, and the best minds are ones that listen to every bit of useful information and then make the decision themselves. Not, don't just follow religiously without any thought process yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's I think I find myself closer to your side of it too. You're like preaching to the choir a little bit about like playing for PR anyway. But like it's that is like the same basic counter argument is the one that I would always make too, is that when you make some adjustment, you are certainly giving away equity from like game theory optimal, and you're betting that you're going to get it back.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We were just agreeing too much here, Nick. But yes, you're on the same side as me. But but you'll be like me. We can't. You
don't know.
We can't ignore the people on the other side who are really talented, intelligent people who think opposite to us. So I don't know. It will be interesting. It will be interesting to try and find out.
Yeah, the luck in the game plays there too in just incredible ways too, where like I've got a student that's like mostly starting off, and I like completely agree with you that they might make dramatic cube mistakes like after you send an early cube or something like that too. But then they're also the ones that are going to find these like impossible 3-away, many-away cubes because it just felt like one and they sent it and it happened to be in the window that time. And so every now and then they'll give you like absolute just like blenders of problems too, right? Because I don't know what to do against this,
Yeah. It is. It's good. We obviously think alike because once upon a time, you had the great book about match cubes. In fact, I've got a what do you call it, a bone to pick with you about this. Because you obviously think about them in the same way as I did. At one time, about 3 or 4 years ago, I thought I was the only person ploughing the furrow of. Don't do match equity calculations. Understand the match score implications at all scores.
Yeah,
and that's what I preach, and I call it the traffic light system. But then but I've found out that people like Thomas Tenlon play like this way. You've written a great book on it. David Presser, he calls it the notch system. He has notches, and so there's a lot more people playing that way than I realized. I really thought I was the only person doing it at one point.
Yeah,
and I totally believe in it, and I hear it's for just for non-experts, and that isn't the case. If you take it to a the real extreme, you can get real information
Mhm.
out of that. So yeah, so I believe in that. Anyway, so going back to my point, so I my is it my bone to pick with you, Nick?
Yeah, yeah,
So I thought, well, Nick completely understands what match play cubes are all about.
yeah,
And then apparently, when you were commentating on Oliver and the top young player coming, you
yeah,
were in total awe about a cube, an overtaking huge cube in his match with Seb.
yeah,
Well, I would have thought that you would get straight away, like, because you preach the match equity, that that immediately if I'm trailing 4-0 to Seb and I'm sat with a 4 cube in my hand,
yeah,
it's like burning in my hands trying to turn it onto 8.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and that's the idea I have. I'm just dying to get that cube onto 8. From the second he gives me that cube on 4 with a 4-0, and it's really good. And that's very much what you preach in your book about
sure,
match cubes. So
yeah,
I was quite surprised when you thought. I mean, it was a great cube, but Oliver is a great player, and I
yeah,
expect players like that of him. So
yeah.
that's it. So what were you thinking when you thought? Because you thought it was almost impossible. Yeah, so I've been told. I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
something I've heard.
No, I
But
wouldn't even have considered it, and it
would you
seemed
not?
I can explain why for sure. But it was so what I talk about in my book is like sending as a trailer recubing. The take
Yes,
point tends to get very high. And
yes,
the match qualities that I talk about is that there's often no recube potential. There's like
right, right.
overage of some sort. Big changes to gammon value happen, right? And so all these
Yes,
things result in wanting to just ship it when you have some chance of market loss.
yes,
Um, and it's harder for your opponent to take if they're leading, right? So what was very exceptional about this position was that it was just like a last roll bear off
yes,
where the person holding the 4 cube thinking about the trailer was actually an underdog.
yes,
And
yes,
for you to be able to send that as an underdog, I'm usually looking for true overage on the points, right? And in
right,
this case,
right.
they were also playing a match to 13. So it
Yes,
was 9 away, 13 away, and he was
yeah,
going to be sending an 8 cube. So in my head, it was just like, well, I mean, we're an underdog and there's no overage. Like, why would this ever be a cube? Like,
yeah.
they're
That,
both
that,
getting,
that,
you know,
that makes sense. Yeah,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. And so what really helped me out actually was this concept that Julian mentioned later in the commentary that the points that are occurring for the leader there are all
yes,
occurring in a 13-point match. And the
yes,
points that are happening for Oliver actually are overage in a sense, that 4 of them are going to happen in a 9-point match. And
yes.
if you can think about it that way, that like points in a 9-point match are worth more than points in a
Yes.
13-point match, then you can, I guess, figure out that the math is probably there. Yeah.
I'm just having fun when I say I've got a bone to pick with you. But it was just because I thought with you writing that
Yeah.
great book, I just thought that would be completely something you were bang on.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
were bang on. That idea of the different values of cubes depending on the scores.
Sure. Yeah.
And of course I've not looked it through, but I imagine if that had been a recube by Seb from leading 4-0 from 4 to 8, it would have been a blunder of about
Right. Yeah.
1,500 or something like that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. But like
Yeah.
we both know the importance of match equity. Match
Yeah.
scores in cubes decision, and that was what your great book was all about, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really wanted to cover in my book was like 99% of match cube decisions. And to me, this one with Oliver and Seb also was
Yeah.
one of these true exceptions, of which I've seen 2 since writing the book that I said
Yeah.
explicitly in the book that I've
Yeah.
never seen in play in my life.
Right.
You know?
Oh, really? Wow.
So,
Yeah.
the other one
That's
was Recube that John Barnes found against, I think, Corey Anderson at Cyprus.
right. Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so some of these though really do require you to understand these match equity leaps and how that changes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I guess there's an intuitive way to get to this too. But
Yes.
it's still like when you get that late into it, things get really weird in a true last roll
Oh,
race
absolutely.
position.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty exceptional. And the reality is that like usually you're not going to get there. And what you need to know is what are like the dramatic changes that happen at like the scores that happen all the time, right? Like
Yeah,
the 4 point match stuff is just
yeah,
massive.
oh, it's
And if
massive.
you can try to understand some of the recube scenarios in terms of that in a way too, like I
Yeah,
think you can then get like a broad intuitive understanding of match play. And
yeah,
when the exceptions come up, kind of like refine it. But my goal is just to like show it's not just leader and trailer. It has something
absolutely.
a little bit different to do, and hopefully after you read through this once, like you feel equipped to like see
Yeah,
mistakes and study them afterward at least, right? Yeah.
yeah. Well, you mentioned Julian, who was your co-commentator.
Yeah.
I might be attributing this to Julian rather than somebody else, but he was a big, theorist on overtaking cubes and how valuable they are. And it's
Mm.
particularly really when you're talking 2 to 4, it's unusual to get an 8 cube. But
Yeah.
obviously, the effect of an 8 cube is even bigger. But overtaking cubes when the gammon's involved, the you know the it, for anybody watching this, just enter in XG some positions
Yeah.
and look at put yourself as trailing in a match holding a 2 cube or a 4 cube in a gammonish position, and it will be nothing like it will show no similarity whatsoever to the cube action at 0-0 to 11 with
Mm-hmm.
the cube in the middle. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a useful exercise, and when I was working on my what I call the traffic light system, I
Yeah.
just put a position in and just flick through all the different scores, and the differences to somebody who's never done that is stunning. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm again preaching to the choir, as you said, as you've written a book on it. You
Yeah.
should, yeah. So, but I do agree with the theories of your book, that's for sure. Even though
Lovely.
I call it a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mainly learned like all that beginning from David Presser with the notches. And I think
Oh,
he's since
right. So,
like
right.
refined that quite a bit too.
Yes.
But yeah, it was just kind of like this, I don't know, like something broad and approachable with it. And it's all the same
Yeah.
idea that like that it just like in a qualitative way shifts much earlier or much later or just don't situations, right? And
It's
yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned David because, well, I mentioned him at the first because there's so many people in the backgammon world that know me, and so many people that know David, and
Yeah.
so many people have said you two would be great mates,
Yeah.
and we're both aware of this, and yet we hardly ever met or seen each other, and he's really kind about me, and I absolutely love all the things I hear about him as well. But the probability is, if we ever met, we wouldn't be able to think of anything to say to each other. But everybody's saying that we'd be great mates. So, David, I hope it's true if we ever do meet one day.
As soon as you start talking about your notches and traffic light
Yes,
system, maybe that's
we'll
when it
be
comes
off.
through.
We'll be
Yeah,
off.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But okay, so it sounds like I was about to ask kind of your approach to study and teaching and things
yeah,
like that. And I can tell like having studied under David Presser for a while, like I took lessons with him early on.
yes,
And
yes,
he really likes to get into every sort of position scenario and try to have some sort of logic and rules in
right,
like in these kinds of games in this position, like you need this many
yes,
pips and all this, and like it should be like to him he wants to have a formula and kind of
right.
know like what the
Formula, yes,
baseline is, and it's not as much
yes,
about like strategic broad thinking about a
yeah,
position. You know, it's very like I've studied this one and I know this about it and this about it and this about it, and usually that'll give me an answer, you know.
right, yes.
So it's sounding like, is that kind of how you approach the game too?
Well, yeah, kind of an in between. Obviously, you've got to have a balanced view of everything. You've got to, some of the great theoreticians that I've coached, I
Yeah.
try and get them to have faith in themselves and the feel for the game. And then other people, ZZ was interesting. I've never had the chance to talk to him.
Hmm.
He gave a talk at Gibraltar and basically said my approach was old-fashioned. He doesn't realise he said that. He talked about. I don't know how he described it, but obviously you can't dismiss anything ZZ says. He's just so
Yeah.
wise on the game.
Yeah.
But I still do. But I am still I'm nearer to David, thinking try and have as many rules. In fact, I have my own 10 commandments of backgammon opening play,
Mm.
and so basically, which are basically rules, ideas, just as a reminder for all the people I work with. But so I'm still on more closer to David's way of thinking on
Yeah.
rules based backgammon. If it's a prime in, the rule is if it's a prime in position, you split, and if it's a blitzer, you don't. That kind of thing. Just rules like that. ZZ, at least in the talk, says he doesn't rely on rules at all. Whether, who knows? But obviously, you have to listen to anything that he says. You know, well, more than a great young player, just great player, full stop. Yeah.
Of course, the truth of it always ends up being that everyone's doing both, right? In some way.
Yes, like, well, I think that. I don't want to say that on his behalf. That's what I thought. Yeah, as long as he doesn't lose me all my customers because he's described Tim Cross's thinking as old-fashioned.
I don't get the impression that you're at risk of losing any of your customers. People seem to love you as a coach and everything. I always hear that you're like always fully booked too. You know, like you don't have room for anyone else.
Well, I'm actually trying to close. Yeah, sure. I'm cutting down because on a serious level, I love coaching and I love seeing people do well. But my game, even though I understand much more, and I'm sure you do this from coaching, you learn more by telling other people, explaining to other people. It's so much, and I know so much more than I did 2 years ago. But I am not playing as well as I was 2 years ago, and that's because I'm jaded. Because I'm teaching so much during the week. When I'm playing my own backgammon, even though I'm still ambitious to be a top player, I feel like I'm working. So this is, and that is something that I'm really trying to address. You know, I've got people, I'm chatting with people about it, and I've cut down a lot on how much teaching I'm doing, but not, and I'm just trying to, because it's my, I've not got that many distractions at my age, and it's like, I've still got big ambition. I still believe I can do more than I've already shown, but talk is cheap. Doing it is the most important thing, and that's why I really have to, not going to backgammon tournaments jaded. But it's certainly this. Like I say, I was playing a lower PR backgammon before I started teaching than I am now, and that is not because of knowledge. It's because I've not got that same. You just have to, to be at the level we're talking about when you're trying to compete with some of the great players we've already mentioned, Mochi, ZZ, Will, there's many of them, great names. We all know the names. Victor, all the great names. I'm sorry if I've missed anybody out because I respect you all.
That's all of them. You got all of them.
Sure. but when you're trying to compete with these guys, you can't do it at 95% effort. 95 seems a lot, but you've not got a chance in hell. You've got to be at 100% all the time to just not, to do that. And I'm certainly nowhere near that over this last 2 years with just being that bit jaded. So I'm working on it, and I'm trying, like I said, I'm really still determined that I'm going to put up something great. And I'm not messed. I always call Thomas Tenlon my younger self. Someone I would have been if I'd have been his age instead of my age playing backgammon, because I admire Thomas's game so much, and the way he thinks about backgammon is so like mine. And so I always think of him as like what I would have been like at his age. But Thomas, I've not given up. I'm still coming after you at my age. That was we've got a bet on it at the moment actually. Who's going to whether he's going to get a Super Grandmaster before I get my G1. So it's only a fun bet. So that'll be a good. It's only fun and friendly, and but I honestly wish him luck in getting his Super Grandmaster. But
it's motivating to be like studying with everyone, right? That's mine. I still would like to hit Grandmaster, and I was talking to some US players that are in like a similar ballpark, and I was like, we should organize some sort of like bet to like who can get there first.
Yes,
because like we're just none of us are, or all of us are, right? If we do something like that,
exactly. But the first one is good. It's a good thing to aim for. Yeah.
I also
we're all there. Everybody's saying you'll be there soon, but it's a hard path. It's hard. It's hard. Just to get that to that level. It's and doing it for 300 points. We can all hit lone PRs, but doing it without having just a cute couple of disasters is hard. It
means you got to be on it for like a decent stretch of like a year or two, right? Like probably 3 to 6 months that you're like
6 months. Yeah.
Right. I totally agree with that. I mean, kind of like a PR slump that I can relate to with too, like teaching where it's just for me it's even more like focusing on commentary and how to get out to more
Oh, absolutely.
tournaments and like learning all
Yes.
these OBS. Like I'm spending all this energy on all these things that are not
Yes.
my game, and it just takes away from
Absolutely.
it, you know?
I
So
never
yeah.
even thought of that, Nick, when I was
Yeah.
saying it. You're even in more in that situation. And you just slightly, and people go, well, it's not that big a difference. And it
Yeah.
probably does only make one PR difference, but one PR difference,
Oh yeah.
it
Yeah.
separates you from one level to another,
Yeah. To me
not
it
in
matters. Yeah.
no, absolutely. So yeah, so you probably, I'm sure you sympathize, you understand what I'm saying more as
Yeah.
much as anybody. If you just do
Absolutely.
too much backgammon, it's good for your knowledge improvement, but it's not good to actually produce it.
Yeah.
And I work a lot on that with in my coaching times with people,
Yeah.
not just playing backgammon, playing good backgammon. Obviously, we work on that a lot, but also the ability to produce your best backgammon. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and we have somebody, Mochi, who's like a role model for absolute, somebody should, we should all try and copy the amount of effort he puts into what seems the most simple of moves is just immense, and it's just an awe to watch him put that much effort into his backgammon. I just love to be able to do it for more than just one odd day here and there.
Yeah. I know
Yeah.
what you mean. That like endurance through a tournament and things
Oh,
like that is very
that's right.
underrated. I don't know. It's like people
Yes.
don't think that that's a big deal to play your best in the finals of a tournament after you've been
Yeah.
playing for like 12 hours straight for 3 days or something, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
also an entirely different skill. You know? So,
Absolutely. And it's a skill I'm afraid I don't
yeah,
think I have.
yeah,
Again, that's partly age and part of this jadedness. I'm
yeah.
definitely, it's one thing I'm working on at the moment. I'm different, all my PRs count,
Hmm.
but I'm definitely playing at a different level in the first match of a day than the fifth match of a day. It really is,
Mm.
there really is a gap now on my average PR in my first matches of days is now around 2.5,
Hmm.
and my average PR in the last match of the day is 4.5 to 5.
Wow.
So it's a huge gap,
Yeah.
and it goes up through. You can almost say it's not exact because you'll get one good match, but you can see a pattern. And
Yeah.
Mark, the BMAB, it's not just me that's like this. Mark, who runs BMAB UK, Mark Adkins, he's kept stats, and the difference between people's performance in round 1 and round 6 is not quite as big as the one I've just talked about myself of 2 PR difference,
Hmm.
but he's talking about a PR difference of like 1.5 between
Yeah.
rounds. So basically, how we run BMAB UK is 3 matches on the Saturday and 3 matches on the Sunday. And he says it goes, the best is always the first on the first day. Then it goes a bit worse on the second match, and then a bit worse on the third match. Then the fourth match, being the Sunday, then is in between the second and third match. And it really is noticeable, the people, not just me, everybody. So again, it's a tip for everybody playing this game. If you're aware of that, in order to solve a problem, you've got to be aware of the problem.
Yeah.
So if you are aware of that disintegration in your game, you do. I'm afraid I've not got all the answers, but do something about trying to solve it, sort it out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, I mean, I'm just like, I get so excited about data in general and
Absolutely.
possibilities with BMAP, and I'm so glad someone's tracking that. That's a very interesting statistic, you know? Yeah.
Exactly, and I'd love to know how. Actually, now we've brought that subject up, I've never even thought this till this second.
Yeah.
But the guy I've just said how much admiration I've got for him, Mochi.
Yeah.
Whether he has the same, it obviously is disintegrated. It will be a lot lower than what I've talked about.
Yeah.
But whether there still is any, is it, what would you call it? Disintegration. There's a better word for it.
Right.
Is there a difference in his game 1 and game 5 in a day? I think even Mochi might have, but I'm sure that gap will be a lot less than us normal mortals
Yeah.
have. You know.
We have that small sample of BMAB like championship experiences though, where he always has like the day one rust that he seems to shake off, you know?
Oh, right.
So
So it's
he's
the
almost
opposite.
like that.
So
Yeah.
it almost, nothing would surprise me that much. It wouldn't be surprised if he was
Yeah.
totally different than the rest of us. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I
But
think
it's
I'm kind of like that too, though. Like I start to get in a
really,
zone where I have to think less
oh
about
wow,
it. And I'm also the kind of student that's like transcribing my matches as I go in general. And if I'm
right,
getting that feedback, I'm always looking at like, what are my tendencies right now that I can clean? Like,
right,
how am I, what are the challenging ones? And like the solution I came up with, am I going to implement that solution for the whole weekend? Or can I have a chance to look at
right.
it and be like, no, that was wrong. And I need a different way to
Yeah,
think about it.
I'm afraid I'm
Yeah.
definitely not in that category. I'm definitely in the category of I hit the ground running and get and slow down and slow and my running slows down
Yeah.
during the course of the day.
That makes sense, though. Yeah, I
Yes,
would
yes,
imagine that most players would be like that. Yeah.
yes, yeah. Well, like I said, Mark's got evidence that that's the case.
Hmm.
You know, he might be somebody interesting to chat to. Or I don't know. He's quite. Uh, I don't know. He might not. But from that perspective, and Mark might not want this kind of experience. But he's a really interesting guy, and he's got those kinds of stats. It
Yeah.
might be worth chatting to him because he's got that. He has collated all the information, and he
Yeah.
might be able to tell you more about that. But he's
I would love that.
a really nice guy, Mark, and one of the. And you talk about different careers.
Yeah.
He was one of the top, if not the top player, in my first career. Of Bieber days. He was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There were a few of us: Steve Bibby, Rick Yanofsky, um, Jim Johnson, and Dale Taylor, and Mark. But then soon after that, people like Paul Lamford came in the scene. But he was just after my first incarnation of, and Dodd Davis. I don't even ever heard that name, but a few
Yeah.
different people. We don't all cross each other's paths all the time,
Yeah.
and then come back. But
I still
yeah,
see
so,
Paul Lamford
Mark
posting
was
about. Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, but Mark was at least as good as the rest of us, and possibly better. He was,
Yeah.
but he's not taken. He plays well. He plays a good game now, but he's not. He's decided not to play. Not to play. Just do the tournament director.
Okay. Yeah. I see Paul Lamford posting about like back game positions all the time and like
Oh
stuff in
yes.
XG with stuff like that, which is always a blast. I love
Well,
it.
Paul's just wants to show how all XG's
Yeah.
inadequacies all the time.
Right. We got a couple people like that. Like
Yes.
Lila Leonhard is like one that I
Yes.
met. Jim
Yeah.
Pasco. They're
Jim
fascinating to
Pascal.
like
I
hear
know.
about
That's
everything
right.
out there.
Yes, yeah. But I mean, it's seen. I've had a good experience against Mochi, showing him how bad, how good a snake was. He didn't realize, because I learned in the days before computers, and so I learned to do the snake. Snake 15 checkers against one,
Yeah.
and I learned how to do it because it was a great thing to do on your own, because the opposition didn't have any decisions to make, so you could do it. And I just loved running the snake round, and I learned how to do it and how successful it was. And even Mochi, as recently as 4 years ago, didn't realize that how powerful it was. He knew it was powerful, of course, but not quite how powerful it was. Because he'd been slightly influenced by XG.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was a good experience to show him what it was like in what we learned in the old days, of just doing it ourselves rather than with any help from XG.
Yeah. So even knowing that XG does have those clear gaps like that, like you don't worry that maybe PR doesn't translate to wins in that way.
I don't think so, but
Yeah.
I am aware that XG is not perfect, and I'm a big campaigner. I really think it's a sad reflection on the backgammon community that XG, however fantastic software it is now 8 or 9 years old, and we've not got more up to date software. I know Jens Averkamp from he was once trying to get a group of us together to obviously we just love Xavier to do something, but it doesn't look like it's part of his thing. I just think I'd love us all to get together, put the money into research and development, and get the next level up from XG. We all think different things about the level of XG. I used to think let's call God the perfect backgammon player. We all and an XG player, and if God treated, was judged XG on XG standards, I believe that XG would be playing. I used to think XG was playing around 0.75, but I now think XG is only playing about 1.5.
Okay.
And different, but that, again, there's no way of proving this because we don't know. But I've certainly seen examples that it's not perfect. But the problem is, if it is playing as low as 1.5, which is my suspicion, how can it judge between Mochi and what ZZ's going to be this year? Of how can it judge when it's only playing 1.5 itself? How can it judge between a 1.9 and a 2.2 player? It just can't, and that is a tiny bit of a problem. But the problem is weak, PR 12 players who don't believe, trying to make out that it can judge that, it can judge at that level. But it is questionable that at the very, very top level, is it becoming impersonating XG a tiny bit to differentiate yourself from from like a 2.2 to a 2.5 player? And I don't know where I stand on that one. But in the meantime, XG is the best we've got, and I'm just embracing it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to put it. I hadn't thought of almost thinking of it as like a bias between truly top level certain range. More or less like XG doesn't necessarily mean marginally, right? Because it's got its own. And there is also like just in the idea of PR a bias toward like certain things. I don't know how to describe it, right? But it's not pure winning chances. It's normalized to try to represent an understanding of the game.
Yes.
Still, it like has its own flaws in itself too, right?
Absolutely. And so what it won't do, for example, is differentiate between somebody who plays strong at the start of a match and somebody who plays strong at the end.
Yes.
But we all know that, and the idea is that that people don't deliberately play strong or weak at the start or end of a game. But people who have clock time pressure issues, if their game is reduced in quality, then that's the most important time. So your match winning chances vary much more at the end of a match. For example, if it's DMP and you play 3-1 badly, you've lost a lot of match winning chances. But if it's 0-0 to 11 and you're opening 3-1 badly, it hardly affects the overall result at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, Dirk covers that super well.
How does he? Yeah.
Have you read that or not?
It's just too technical for me, Dirk's books. It's not. I'm not sure that's the way to be. There's a guy on Alex Exegio, or I don't know. Sorry, Alex, I don't know how to pronounce, but he's into really, really deep theoretical thinking.
Yeah.
And I am not yet convinced that is what makes you a better backgammon player. But we will, I'm always open to new evidence to prove me wrong. It's an interesting debate for sure.
I know for someone like Dirk, it would have been he wanted to write a book that he wished existed when he was studying the game that would have saved him like 3 years of time. So it worked for him. And I get that. And to me, I'm not sure that anything in the book was like something that made me a better backgammon player immediately. But there were things that I didn't quite understand that made me probably better at studying or something like this.
Right.
And I know someone like Mark Olson had shared too that it was like the first book he'd read since he can remember where he really learned something new.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they're like, it's definitely, there's this whole temptation in this kind of stuff too. That like where I want to put my studying efforts is not always in the most optimal PR results oriented kind of thing. Like sometimes it's just fun to like learn more about some silly thing in the game, right?
Yes.
So I think if you have that kind of interest in like the underpinnings of in backgammon,
absolutely,
and it's an interesting book.
Yeah. No, I'm very pragmatic in that. If it's not going to help me, if I don't believe it's going to help me be a better backgammon player, it's less. That's the thing. But I'm not saying that about. No way am I criticizing. I don't know enough. But it doesn't naturally attract me. Dirk's way of presenting that level of work. I actually think a book. I like a more practical book like Backgammon Strategy I think that's a wonderful book. Just even though, as Mark says, I could probably say, well, I know 90 to 95 to 99% of it, but just listening to Mitchie's way he feels about it has helped my game improve as well. Not that he's taught me anything I didn't know completely,
Yeah.
although there is plenty for the newer player to learn and to learn well. It's a really great thing.
Oh yeah.
But from if I am considered as one of the top players, from a top player's perspective, it's just listen. Even though you know most of it, just hearing how a different perspective and how he got to the same point you have, it gives you a deeper understanding. And I really want to try and play backgammon from understanding rather than memory. That's been my goal for the last 4 or 5 years, to try and understand. And Mochi has said, what's the joy in studying? It's trying to understand this game, and that's definitely where I come from. Just understanding more and more about why you do certain things, not just what is the right thing to do, but why it's the right thing, because that helps you in other positions, not just that single one position.
Right. Yeah. That back checker strategy was like that. He has like rules. It seems like kind of a similar approach that way too. I was going to ask that. I get the impression that a lot of how you think about your decisions is probably similar to how you teach to your students then. Where you're trying to have these like stoplight system stuff, like things that you actually use, and you share that with students. Yeah,
that's right. Well, and it's also, I have been accused, and it's a reasonable accusation, that I'm teaching myself constantly, and and I don't know how guilty I am of that. And I obviously try and see people's weakness, and I work with them all the time. But of course, I concentrate on my own weaknesses. I think that's just a normal thing. I try and be a good coach. I try and my best to, but I'm sure that I am slightly influenced by understanding my own weaknesses. But it is also arguable that I'm a better coach of somebody who can't concentrate brilliantly than Mochi, because he doesn't know what it's like to do it. I've been through all the battles of the frustrations of sitting down at a backgammon table and being absolutely determined to give it me everything, and then halfway through match 3, losing interest. not losing interest, still playing, but playing on autopilot. And then when you wake up from having played on autopilot for three or 4 games, you just it's and so I know the difficulties of it and why it's not easy, and that's why I push it so much. Whereas it's arguable that having gone through those battles and not succeeded yet, but having gone through those battles, it makes me easier to talk to people about it than somebody like Mochi. He'll probably tell me that he's had to go through the battles and he's succeeded, but watching him, it doesn't feel like it, does it? It feels like he's just, it's just natural for him to just give everything to every play throughout his life,
Yeah.
I'd love to ask him. I've never really had a long, in-depth conversation with Mochi, so I'd love to ask him if it's a battle, if that side of the game that he seems where he is the master at, that giving everything on every play, if that's something that he's had to work on, or just is his natural, it's inbuilt in his DNA. That'd be interesting to ask him.
I get the impression that he's like one of his probably real talents, that he is a hard worker. That he's going to put a lot into studying it that way. And maybe just like the intuitive sort of strategic thinking about position and like snappy decision making that like a Sander, for example. Like maybe that's not like the core of his like real strength at backgammon or something. But I think the hard work must be something that, I mean, you always have to put effort into your talents too, right? But it seems like something that he can lean on, like that's a thing that he has. Yeah.
Sander taught me a lot at the UBC as well. What Sander taught me was how far you can get at this game by just understanding backgammon.
Yeah.
And it's not this, I don't think it's this incredible, it's work and natural talent, but he has worked at it. But he plays backgammon, in my opinion, by understanding every position. So whilst the famous banana split they played, that the whole world were in awe about, for him, it wasn't a risky play. For him, it was, what's the most important goal in this position?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it. And I felt that he spent 2 minutes trying to talk himself out of the play, not
Yes.
to try and talk himself into the play. And then he came up with a correct play. But that, I think Sander plays backgammon not from memory, but by understanding the nature of positions. And when you play in that way, it's a different experience. You're looking for certain things, a bit like I described about Oliver before, that about finding that cube. It was, or if I believe I might have found it, because not because I'm a mathematical genius like John O'Hagan and Art Benjamin, but because I would have understood that in this position, recubing is is something we want to be doing as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And that is how Sander plays, not just his cube back check, but his checker back. He understands what's important. It feels, at least, I shouldn't be talking on Sander's behalf. That's my interpretation of how Sander plays backgammon. Again, it would be interesting to see if I've got that right, that he understands what is required in each circumstance. He might have to think it through, but that's it. So, that's the twin things I'm aiming for. Much is, if you could get Much's determination with Sander's understanding and Much's technical knowledge, eventually somebody's going to turn up and hopefully it won't be in my lifetime, and I've still got a tiny bit of chance to make a higher mark.
I can throw a couple other talents in there too. A guy that you mentioned earlier was Thomas Tenland. An interview with him, you mentioned, like, if I would have seen the game earlier or studied with XG, like maybe that's what I could have been. My impression in having a conversation with Thomas Tenland was more like, I understand exactly why this guy is so much, because he just retains what he studies in a completely different way than I do.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've not watched that interview, so I'm going to watch that interview.
Yeah. But the efficacy of your study, like your ability to play backgammon, to learn from it, and then absorb that and keep it in some way, right? Like, that is a thing that not everyone does the same as well. And I feel like his talent there, like, if he spends time with a position or like thinks through it, he's likely to figure it out. He can just get there, like which is very different too. Right?
Another great thing to learn from Thomas, watching him play, is his tempo of play and his calm, relaxed nature. The way he does it is very, very impressive, and something we can all learn from. His rhythm. I don't know how David Gallagher described it once. Something, I don't know, whether rhythm or tempo. It's obviously a similar thing, but that's what strikes you. Obviously, he's got great knowledge as well.
But his processing capacity is just like so different. He's like going, like, it's very defined. Like, I can go through the same work and relax and just get like a wild left field thing, which I guess he does sometimes too. But I can just notice a difference in, like, it was very obvious to me. And I guess like another one I'd throw in there is something like a different kind of retention of like a Ryan Rebello, where it's someone that can just play a lot and has near photographic memory of the game. And like, can you actually play it as just like I've seen everything and I remember it now?
If there's anybody going to do it, it's Ryan. I could not believe. Well, having said that, you impressed me with your being able to transcribe and commentate at the same time. But at Marbella in the UBC Contender Tournament, I was watching Ryan transcribe. I struggled to transcribe at one-to-one time, and he was transcribing at double speed time, just putting it on, and he was I couldn't even see the dice, and he transcribed. The guy, he's just like an amazing, he's a natural genius in so many ways. And this is what I'm trying to compete again. It doesn't seem very promising, but never mind. I'm not giving in. I'm not giving in. But when you talk, actually, this conversation has made me think it might be a wasted journey. Forlorn, not wasted. Forlorn attempt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep
trying. You can always get better and figure out what your unique strength is and like your way of getting there, and where that takes you. Yeah. For me, I feel a little bit like that too. Like, I can do a lot better. But like maybe something like the transcription or being able to hold a running pip count. Like, I have these sort of like,
I've got some qualities that are natural.
they're like
that other people don't have.
multitasking in a way or something
Yeah,
like that. I don't know what it is, but
it could be really useful. But
yeah,
I do think I really empathise with what you were saying about your life being on professional backgammon, either coach, commentator,
yeah,
writer. It's hard to do playing, to give playing its absolute maximum when you've got all those other things at once, so
yeah,
it's something you need to think about, or you just stick with the other roles,
yeah.
which you've already made a big name for yourself anyway. But
Right.
there's only you can decide that.
Of
Yeah,
course, of course. Yeah.
yeah,
I think I'm probably going to shift towards trying to play a little harder for. I caught the bug playing in Ohio recently. Like I
all right,
remember what it's like to play. This is a lot of fun. Try to like
yes,
perform.
yeah,
Um,
playing instead of
yeah.
commentating. Yeah,
But on that same track, like so if you're like a formula and ideas kind of person, then you've got a lot of the game mapped out. And I imagine what you probably lose, and it's an interesting topic to me too in the sense of like how do you teach this? But there's like all kinds of positions that come up that lean on one of those rules a little bit, but there's some like other rule that's alive too, or some little exception case. And like you end up in these spots where well, I have the stoplight system,
yes,
but except for here and here and here. And when you play a lot, right, you know that and you just kind of absorb it. But like, and when you don't, you kind of forget and make more of these. So how do you
yeah.
deal with that aspect of the study of just like having to have that experience in a way, right?
Well, my feel is my theory, and the one I coach is you've got to learn the rules first. Learn the rules, learn the understanding, and then it's about finding the exceptions after that. But you can't find the exceptions until you've got the basis. And what I say is all I can do is teach you the rule, teach you the main concepts, the big things, and I can teach you how to produce the best, and taking your time, checking that you've not, checking it, you see your mistake before you press the clock rather than after you press the clock. Things like that. I can teach you all that, but in the end, you're going to have to make a decision. And all we can do is just. And I still, and I'm saying to them, look, I'm not a perfect player.
Yeah.
I hope to play around 3, and I sometimes play around 4. Nobody, Mochi and Sander, they're not perfect.
Yeah.
They are they're brilliant geniuses, but nobody's perfect. So when you're playing around, so a lot of the people are the ones I enjoy coaching most are the ones just on the verge of grandmaster and trying to push them through. But don't be too hard on yourself. Nobody's perfect. All you can do is understand the game to the best of your ability, and then make the decisions that you've described, where it's one thought against another thought to the best of your ability. And some are better than others at that skill. And I don't think all you can do is give people as much information as they can possibly own, and then it's down to them to make that decision. But
Yeah.
you've got to give them as much information as you possibly can. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, if I one of interesting, when I'm coaching, one of the techniques I use is sometimes I'll get people I'm coaching, say a PR10 player who's playing against, he'll play XG, but he'll have my coaching between moves, how I see the position.
Yeah.
And then suddenly he's playing at 5. Because, not because I've told him the rules, but I've told him tell him or her all the different thought process that should be going to this. And then I go, that's the thought process. Now you make the decision.
Oh, I love
And
it.
and they might still get it right, but they've learned what they should be thinking about and what decisions. And of course, suddenly then they're playing at a much different level. And what I've described to them, they totally understand what I'm saying. It's not like it's just that they haven't thought about backgammon in that way.
Right.
And it's really good. But in the end, that decision-making process, I can't see, it's in the end, we've got to make a decision. Mochi was interested about his performance. I don't think people realize for somebody as genius as Mochi, 3.2 is for him. I mean, it'd be great for me. For him, it's a very poor performance.
Yeah.
And and he was talking about partly he just wasn't on form that time, but also partly every time he said, I saw him say something, and he wasn't making excuses, but every time he had a guess, he got it wrong. Yeah. And I make guesses, and the idea is that you guess right more than you get it wrong. Or sometimes you play a match and every single guess is right, and it's just like, but you still, what you're talking about, having to make this difficult decision, and so you use as much information as you can, but then you're reduced to guessing at the end, and sometimes you guess right and sometimes you guess wrong. And what she said, that in that particular match, again, it felt like every time he guessed, he got it wrong. And sometimes you can just be on that form that you can't describe, and that you're so on top and you're so buzzing, and so like every time you guess, you're doing it right. Because we can't. It's a great, and if Backgammon was was easier, it would be a boring game. Yeah. And so it's great that it can even make, not players out of perfection. That's what makes it a fascinating game and a difficult game.
Of course, I love that. Like, no matter how hard we try to remove luck from a crazy dice game, in a way too, like it just shows up in new ways every time, even in your PR and your decision making. It's just everywhere. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it can. It does. I mean, Thomas Christensen, the first UBC, he did, he played brilliant, but he just got the wrong dice at the wrong time. Last year in the quarterfinal of the UBC, playing that great Turkish player, Ali, he was a better player than me. It was easy to take. You interviewed me straight after the match, and it was easy to take because I lost to a better player.
Yeah.
But even though he was a better player, I was one decision away from knocking him out of the UBC. I still can't play double fire. Anybody who's seen that match, I still can't play double fire as well, by the way. I'm starting to get a bit more of a feel. But literally, but that's what I'm saying about luck in PR, but it wasn't painful because deep down I knew Ali was a better player, and it's easier to lose to somebody like that than it is because you've not performed well. And but my point is, even at that level, it's one decision that can separate me from a semi-final appearance in the UBC, which would have been wonderful for me. There's less pressure on me when I go and play in a UBC than there is in like your ZZ, if Will played, or Victor, or the top player, or Mitchie, because they either win it or it's no good. Whereas for me, if I get to the quarter or semi-final, I've made an achievement in itself, so it's and I'm really proud of the fact I've not reached the knockout stages the last two times, but they wouldn't be, you see, because they've got the different pressures on them. They either win the UBC contender or they don't. But for me, I've never reached the semi-final. So if I reach the semi-final this time, it would be a wonderful, it would be a success for me. And so it's less pressure on me than on them. That's what I'm trying to keep myself anyway.
I got you. So you will be at the UBC this year, and your goal is
absolutely. It's my number one. It's what as somebody, it's what I consider the gold standard of backgammon, the UBC event. I've changed it slightly, but I'm so grateful to Mark and the Galaxy team. I still think they've produced something that is really important for top level backgammon.
For sure.
And it's good.
It's
always evolving as well. Mark's always making it evolve, and the Galaxy team.
Are you excited for the electronic board?
I do think it's a slightly negative this time that we're doing the qualifying on computers, and I know two top players who haven't played, and it slightly devalues it. But I understand why Mark's done it, and it's but even though it's not going to change this year, I do think that it might only be a one-off year, but we'll see. We'll see how successful it is. And I don't play my best backgammon on Galaxy, which is Slav. So I'm actually in training at the moment, and I'm taking a week of training to just play on Galaxy, try and get the feel for the board. Ryan, interestingly, talks the other way because he's a computer player. He feels much more at home on the computer, and I can sympathize with that because he's not had the and so he doesn't feel totally at home on a real backgammon board. But it's only a matter of time that if he played a lot more live, that it would come in. But you need time to acclimatize. I mean, he's a pretty great player even on a board, but I'm saying what I'm saying is I can understand that he's even better on Galaxy or a computer than he is on a board,
Yeah.
because just that feel and visualization that comes naturally to me on a backgammon board or on XG, I don't have on Galaxy or even Heroes. It just, I don't. It's hard, and you, why not? It's the same game, but I just don't, and I just know it in myself. You know.
No, I completely agree. They're different,
Yeah.
and that's always the most interesting piece of the whole like BMAB and should PR from that count and all these different formats that he's kind of been battling for. It feels to me like the BMAB organization is doing like the thing that makes sense for like the greater community in respect to all that, you know. Like I get both sides of that. But like regardless of whether it's like being a very good electronic board player or online player or whatever, they're all very difficult and require a high level of backgammon skill. But they are also all different. Which is very
there is a small difference. It's not much, but again, the gaps between the greatest players in the world are really tiny. You know, they are really small. Like I said, I keep going on about it. Not that I'm bitter in any way, Nick, but that one decision, is still haunting me.
Yeah. Well, you might have. It sounds like I did a whole interview with Ali, and I forgot to record the audio for it. It's brutal, so I don't have.
A nice guy as well. But
but I have it in my head. But he probably won't be there to knock you out. I think a lot of the Turkish players really don't want to play on the electronic boards. Yeah.
Well, that's a shame. If Ali doesn't play, Seb doesn't play, and a couple of players have said no. I'm for the good of the game. I'm not. I understand the view. I can't. I've not got enough time left as a top player to afford to have 1 year out. You know, I just can't do it. I can't. You know, I just can't afford that luxury of making a stance like that. I still hope that one day I can do it. And if it's not, you know, I really think I've only got 2 to 3 years with any hope of competing against ZZ. I can't compete with them now, but at least, but to have realistic hope. You know, it's not even going to be there in 3 or 4 years' time. You know, that's
you can have your day though. You know,
I can have my day.
We talked about there.
Just when the wind blows in the right direction. And it's, you know, even though, you know, and if you're a decent, you know, what example? Oh yeah, I made fun. I don't know if you saw on Facebook. I played in Gibraltar, and I got beat something like 13-1, 9-0. In the first 2 rounds, and I made the best of it. I said, there won't be a player in backgammon history that's made less blunders in a backgammon tournament because I played so many. And of course, it had to be a top player who got crushed both times because I only made 2 blunders in the whole tournament. So obviously, had I had any success whatsoever, I would have made more blunders. So that's like trying to look on the bright side all the time. You've got to do sometimes, but yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. This has been an absolute pleasure, Tim. Thank you so much for joining me for this. I feel like I love the way you think about the game and like learning about your goals. I wish you luck at the UBC, of course, too, and getting some focus on that study. Yeah,
I will do. I've got training booked for the week before with a friend, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks so much for watching this. If you made it this far, everybody, and I'll be back with more position analysis and interviews. I don't know, maybe not on the same schedule that I've been doing, but there's more to come. So, thanks everybody. Thanks, Tim.
And thanks for inviting me, Nick.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.